The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Well, greetings from Fight Island, Abu Dhabi. I am Brett Okamoto, and I did make the trek over here for this week for UFC 267, 2 title fights. Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker, the return of Khamzat Chimaev, a whole lot of storylines to get into on this 14-fight UFC card. Ian Parker did not make it out to Abu Dhabi, but he comes to us from the comfort of, I believe, your own home, right there in South Florida?
Yeah, it sounds about right. It's not exactly Fight Island, but close second, so we'll take it.
Well, there's nothing like sleeping in your own bed, man, especially before a 14-fight card. As I mentioned, UFC 267, we are going to get into all of those things. But before we do, let's look back at how Ian did last week with his best bets on the Paulo Costa Marvin Vettori. Man, that was a fun fight, and he did have a best bet on it. He had Marvin Vettori. I was a little scared. I didn't know what was going on there with Paulo Costa, so I was a little nervous. Ian told me, don't be nervous, take Marvin Vettori. We also got Jessica Rose Clark, which looked like a pretty easy one. She gets the win there. We did not get Mason Jones inside the distance. He did win the fight, but he wasn't able to get the finish. So nice job on the 2-1, Ian. And let's get right into these UFC 267 prelims. As I mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of them, so I'm just going to go through pretty rapid fire, get your thoughts on all of these and what are your plays that you like out of them. Again, I'll just a long list of them. You got Andre Petrosky, he's on the card. He was just on the Ultimate Fighter series very recently. Amanda Ribas and Verna Jandiroba, 2 very popular, very good strawweights in that women's division. Albert Duraev, he's coming off of an impressive performance on the Dana White Contender Series. So a little bit of everything here on this very international UFC 267 prelim event. Let's start with the curtain jerker, the flyweights. Tiger Ulanbekov versus Alan Nascimento. Where are we going in this fight, Ian?
We are going to go with Ulanbekov, and we're going to actually take him here by decision. The lines are very large, but as we've seen out of his opponent, Nascimento, his only losses out of the last 4 have been by decision. And for Ulanbekov, his loss also by decision. I just think here this is the right fight to take that play here at plus odds. That's how we're going to go with this one.
Okay, moving right along to the middleweights. The aforementioned Andre Petrosky, he takes on Hu Yun-Zun. What do you think of this 185-pound fight?
This one's pretty interesting. You know, with Petrosky, we saw in the Ultimate Fighter, and we've seen that if he isn't able to get his wrestling going early, he tends to struggle a little bit. And his opponent is a tough guy who's going to come forward. Now, for Hugh, his last 2 losses by decision or over the 1.5 mark, and Petrosky's last few wins also between the 2.5 marked in the 3rd round. So our bet for this one is going to be over 1.5, and we are going to get that at plus odds as well.
Love the plus odds, of course, as always. All right, how about a middleweight fight between Marwan Amirkhani, a very fun fighter in that 145-pound division, taking on Lerone Murphy. Who do you like in this one?
You know, I've really been impressed with Murphy, especially in his last fight. You know, he showed grit, he showed toughness, his striking was just firing all cylinders. And against a guy in Amirkhani, you know, he is kind of submit or bust. We've seen that happen too many times here, and his cardio tends to fade. His striking from the outside, he throws some of those side kicks, not bad, but against a guy in Murphy, if he's not able to get this fight to the ground, I think he's going to be in trouble, and he gets finished. So for me, I like Lerone Murphy here to win by TKO at plus 138. I think he stuffed those takedowns, and he gets the finish.
I like what you're doing here by picking the method, Ian, because there are some long odds in these opening prelims. So if you want to get some money on them, to get better odds, you got to try and hunt out that method. Let's move to a light heavyweight fight between Michal Oleksiejczuk and Shamil Gamzatov. How do you see the matchup here at 205?
Lord Michel, look, this is a guy that we've seen when he's able to keep the fight standing. He's got devastating power, good striking, and he comes forward. Weakness, when he gets put on his back, he tends to get submitted. We saw it against Ovince St. Preux and against Jimmy Crute. His opponent, though, hasn't fought in quite some time, and he's more of a grinder. So I'm going to go with the underdog here. And Lord Michel, I think he gets it done, keep the fight standing, stay at a distance, and maybe gets the finish. But I just think his striking, and this is a nice dog play here.
Okay, moving right along to the welterweights. Elizeu Zaleski versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Again, a welterweight fight. We're moving on to the fifth fight of the evening. Break down this one for me, Ian.
I like Zaleski here. This is a guy who has fought much higher competition, a guy in St. Denis who's known for his submission game. Zaleski is a very tough guy to take down, to keep down. I think his striking is just going to be too much. I think he wins here by TKO at plus 130. We're sticking with the method of victories. To your point, Brett, the odds are just way too far, so we're going to find our spots to pick for value, and for me, this is a good one here.
All right, moving right along, middleweight fight. Albert Duraev, as I mentioned, guy who turned some heads in the Contender Series earlier in his career, facing Roman Kopylov. What do you think of this matchup?
We saw Kopylov in his last fight lose by submission. We saw him give up some compromising positions, and the striking just wasn't there. Duraev, I think, is one of those prospects from the Contender Series that I feel like is truly UFC ready. Again, the odds very high here at minus 360. I think he takes advantage of that submission game, and we're going to do another method of victory here, plus 120 for him to get it done by submission.
Okay, this should be a fun fight. Ian, Zubaira Tukhugov and Ricardo Ramos. Sort of that co-main event of the prelim portion of the card. What do you think of this 145-pound fight?
I'm actually kind of surprised at the odds here, Brett. For me, I don't see why Zuba is actually the favorite. His last loss against Dawodu, his striking wasn't there. If he can't wrestle, he loses. And we saw a guy in Ramos beat a very tough Bill Aljo in his last fight. He showed takedown defense. He showed striking, cardio, a very tough pace. I actually like the underdog here in Ramos. I think his striking is better. As long as that takedown defense holds up, I think his pace also is what gets it done. We're going to go with Ramos at dog odds.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by the odds as well. I've been impressed with Ramos throughout his UFC career, and that gets us to the strawweight fight that's going to lead into the main card of UFC 267, and that's Amanda Ribas taking on Verna Jandiroba. Two very fun personalities in this fight, and two very an interesting clash of styles here. What do you think of the strawweight fight, Ian?
I think this is one of these times where Vegas has the odds really off based on someone's last loss and someone's last win, but not considering the level of competition. Verna Jandiroba beating Murata and winning by TKO, she beat someone who was just known for her grappling, her clinch game, not her striking. It's not to take anything away from Verna's win, but fighting someone in Amanda Ribas who was pretty much on a straight, direct path to a title shot. If she got past Rodriguez, she got tagged, she lost. It happens to the best of us. Well, best of them, not me. I look for her to bounce back here. I think this is a really good matchup. On the feet, she will be the better striker. She's a black belt in her own right in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. I think as long as she stays off her back, this is a very good fight for her to come back to and win. I like Amanda Ribas a lot at minus 160. I believe she should be minus 200 just based on the level of competition itself. Very clear path here. Stay off your back. You get the win.
Well, I like that, man. I like it when you're able to say what you think the line should be, and that shows us just exactly the level of value that you're seeing in some of these plays you're putting out. So great job on the prelims. Let's turn to this main card. This is where this is where most of the interest lies, of course, and there are plenty of good fights on this fight. Again, as I mentioned right at the top, a lot of good narratives. Khamzat, I think, is one right there at the very top. Everybody wants to see how he looks coming back of a long layoff due to COVID. You got Islam Makhachev and Dan Hooker, who takes this fight on short notice. The interim bantamweight title fight, but a lot of people looking at this is like, hey, this is pretty legit championship fight, interim or not. And then, of course, the main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira, who have looked like they've been best friends all fight week, but I do think that they will fight each other pretty hard in this main card. Let's start off with the very first one, though, Ian. Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Oezdemir. Ankalaev, of course, a lot of hype building up behind this guy. And it's deservedly so. He's won the fights, but I kind of look at this as potentially a step up in competition. Do you see it that way, and what do you make of the line?
Agree with you 1,000% here. The line's a little wide for me, especially for someone who hasn't fought top five. Volkan Oezdemir has been fighting that level for a very long time, and he's had success. I mean, his last fights against Jiri, he was doing okay until he wasn't, and that's what happens against Jiri Prochazka sometimes. But for me, for Volkan Oezdemir, he has to either win or just not be accepted, but he'll become the litmus tester, the gatekeeper for this division. Ankalaev, I think, is the real deal. His striking, his speed, he's very good everywhere, and I think it's going to be way too much for Volkan Ozdemir. We've seen that chin. It's not holding up like it once did, and his wrestling isn't there. He's going to stand. He's going to strike, and I think he gets finished by Ankalaev. We like him here at plus. I think it's almost even money at this point to win by TKO or KO. I think Ankalaev gets it done. Oh, plus 110, actually, we're at right now, so even better.
Plus 110 for an Ankalaev TKO KO victory. I like it. Okay, man, let's talk about this next guy. We talked about a little bit of hype building behind Ankalaev. It is nowhere near the hype building behind this man. He is Khamzat Chimaev. He's undefeated, 9-0. This will just only be his 4th fight in the UFC, but look at these closing odds in his first 3 fights in the UFC. The lowest one there against John Phillips, minus 450. In McKee, a fight that, by the way, Chimaev took 10 days after his UFC debut in a different weight class, so he had to cut weight for that one. He was a minus 1,500 favorite against McKee. Obviously, he looked the part during that fight and then going out and knocking out Meerschaert in short order. So a little bit less of a favorite there when you're looking at those odds here against Li Jingliang. What do you make of the hype around Khamzat Chimaev, and what does that mean in terms of if you're trying to bet him?
Man, minus 575 is very high. And look, I think the hype is real. However, we haven't seen him fight in quite some time. Again, he's dealt with COVID, but this was someone who was on track for either division for a title shot. He was so dominant. And sometimes the problem I have in finding and betting on someone straight, especially at these odds, which is no question, is that you don't see a lot. How do you gauge his striking where it's come on the feet just because he knocked out Gerald Meerschaert in, what was it, a minute, 46 seconds, whatever it was? I think this is a huge step up in competition fighting the Leech. The Leech has fought Neil Magny, Zaleski. He has fought guys higher up in the division or within the top, 7 to 12, which Khamzat Chimaev is not. However, what we saw Neil Magny do to the Leech is what I think Khamzat Chimaev will do, plus some. So for me, I think he gets it done. He gets the fight to the ground at some point and finishes it by TKO. And that, to me, is the best way to play this fight at the moment. And I believe you're getting plus 150 odds. So until this hype train is derailed, I'm riding it, and we're going to go with him again today.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot there because you say you're on the hype train until it gets derailed. So does that mean even if he does get by this fight, and let's say that perhaps he would have fought Leon Edwards back at the end of last year, or the beginning of this year, would you have still thought that there was some value on Chimaev? Or do you think at some point, because of that rise in competition and because of the fact he has all this hype, that there's going to be value on betting against this guy at some point?
At some point, the odds have to come down. If he were to fight Leon Edwards today, he would be an underdog. He would have to be. Leon Edwards is essentially next in line for a title shot if he gets past Jorge Masvidal. And you're talking about a guy in Chimaev who has not fought anybody in the top 12 or 15 yet. So for me, what I mean by until it gets derailed, meaning until he gets exposed a little bit, faces adversity. If this fight goes the distance and, Lee is able to steal a round from him, I think that humbles this guy a little bit. This is why, for me, the odd is way too far for someone who hasn't fought someone in the top 10, hasn't fought in 2 years. I think the best thing that happened to him, not getting sick, of course, but not fighting Leon Edwards that fast in his career. Styles makes fights. Maybe he would get Leon down, but here it's a whole different ball game. I think this is a good matchup at this point in his career, and we're going to really see where he's at.
Okay, well, we like Chimaev by finish. A little bit of a plus money there for the finish, TKO, KO. Let's move on to the heavyweight fight. Very interesting fight here, talking from a betting perspective. Alexander Volkov versus Marcin Tybura. Volkov, momentum is on Tybura's side, no question. He's a guy who's on a 5-fight win streak. He is finding ways to get it done. But Volkov has fought tough competition. The results haven't been exactly what he wanted, but he has fought some very, very good names. Just most recently, of course, Cyril Gane. How do you look at this matchup where Volkov is the big favorite despite the momentum that Tybura has?
Look, the one thing that we should mention, though, with Volkov, when he loses these big fights outside of Derek Lewis, he's losing by decision. Curtis Blades, decision, in that fight against Cyril Gane, dominant, but he hung in there the whole time. Marcin Tybura puts himself in these weird situations where he gets rocked and then he comes back and he gets the job done. But what we've seen out of Tybura is he's been doing a lot of wrestling. And Volkov, that's the way to do this fight. If he can't get the fight down, they both are good kickboxers in their own right. So for me, this fight is going to be the over here. And, at minus 120, I think that's the play. Because for anyone who wants to take Tybura, I get it. To your point, Brett, the momentum is on his side. And Volkov has been fighting the higher level competition, but they both are not finishers, and they don't get finished very often. So for me, over 2.5 at -120 is the way to go here.
Yep. Let's get to the last 3 fights on this card, man. It really closes out very, very strong, starting with Islam Makhachev and Dan Hooker fighting at 155 pounds. They both made weight, seemingly with no issues. I mean, they both do cut a lot of weight, but they stepped on the scale, made weight on Friday. Dan Hooker has shown me a lot of confidence, man. He just has the look of somebody who truly believes he's going to win this fight. Not a lot of people share that sentiment. Makhachev installed as a very, very significant favorite, as he always is in all of these fights against these guys. Are you giving Dan Hooker a shot, or are we going with Makhachev in this one?
Man, as much as I'd love to see Dan Hooker win this, who wouldn't? The guy's a superhero at this point. You know, getting that win in his last fight was so important to him, and then to stick around and take the fight that apparently nobody wants, kudos to him. The guy is one of the toughest men to ever step foot in the cage. We've seen it time and time again. However, I don't know where he beats Islam Makhachev here other than maybe catching him. But Islam, to me, is just a very high-level IQ fighter. He knows when to wrestle. He knows when to strike from a distance. But because of Hooker's toughness and because he is able to defend well, take damage, you know, outside of the Chandler fight where he got tagged early and finished, we don't see that very often with Dan Hooker. I am going to go with Islam Makhachev. However, we're going to take him by decision at +100, so even money. So instead of doing -625 or even throwing him in a parlay where you would get maybe a few extra pennies here, and even money just for Makhachev to win and for Hooker to survive. And I think that's what happens here.
Great. All right, let's get to that interim bantamweight title fight, Petr Yan versus Corey Sandhagen. One thing that stuck out to me was I was talking to these guys this week. Well, Yan doesn't say much, man, and he's pretty sick of talking about Aljamain Sterling, so I didn't get a strong read on Petr Yan. I don't think, if you can get a strong read on Petr Yan, good for you, because I just think that guy is a hard nut to crack. He's very stoic. He's the same guy every single fight week, but you know he's ready to go inside the octagon. From Corey Sandhagen, I just like this guy's cerebral approach, man. I always have, and he said that he learned some very valuable lessons in his last fight. He thought he beat TJ Dillashaw, but he's like, you know, when it goes to the judges, it's a different type of ball game. You know, I hurt TJ Dillashaw a lot more than he hurt me, but as I rewatch that fight, I say to myself, if I had just thrown 3 more jabs in this particular instance, you know, I probably win that fight. And so I think that that's an important lesson to learn. I think it's something that kind of you put in the back of your mind, and it'll be interesting because if this fight goes long, you know, what is Sandhagen doing to try to make sure that he's getting those extra points on the scorecard? So what do you think about the possibility that this fight does make it the distance, and ultimately who are you picking in this one?
I do think it goes the distance, but I'm going to start off with what you said about Corey Sandhagen. I do like his cerebral approach. However, I kind of disagree with what he said that a few more jabs could have won the fight. That's not what Corey's issue really is, at least from a betting standpoint from what I see, and especially when it goes to the judges. I think Corey sometimes is so confident in his abilities, so confident in his ground game, his defense off his back, that he is willing to kind of put himself in compromising positions because he strikes from the bottom, he stays active. But against a guy in Petr Yan, you can't do that. You know, this guy does not make mistakes. He really doesn't. And he is a lot stronger than we think. When he comes forward, he gets better as the fight goes on. And for me, for Corey Sandhagen, he either has to be on top in the scramble or he's got to fight this from a distance and use that range. He's going to be the taller fighter. You know, for me, though, I can't pick against Petr Yan in this situation from what I've seen him out of his career. This guy knows exactly who he is. You're right, he is stoic. He doesn't show much emotion, but when he's there and he's ready to fight. I think he comes forward. He protects himself. He doesn't get hit very much. He doesn't get taken down. And no one outstrikes him, at least not yet. He's able to fire away. He picks his spots. I think Petr Yan gets this fight. I know he's sick about talking about Aljamain Sterling, and guess what? We don't even have to bother with that. We have an excellent fight here. Probably one of the most looking forward to interim title fights we've seen in a really long time. For me, it's Petr Yan. I don't think he finishes Corey Sandhagen. Sandhagen does not get finished very often, as we've seen. But at +150, Petr Yan by decision, I like that.
Yeah, that's a nice little number there, and Jan's certainly capable of winning a 5-round fight. We've seen it out of him before. So let's move on. We talked about a lot of fights here, Ian. Let's get to the main event. It is Jan Blachowicz facing Glover Teixeira, and usually when we are talking about Blachowicz, we are talking about this guy doesn't get his respect. You know, he's always the underdog in every fight. I think that those days are pretty much done, man. I mean, when you stop Israel Adesanya's quest for 2 championships, the manner in which he handled Dominic Reyes to win the title, You know, maybe someday we'll be talking about Jan as an underdog again, but not in this one. He is the favorite against 42-year-old Glover Teixeira, who a lot of people did not think was going to be here just a few years ago, but he's had a resurgence. 42, he actually just turned 42 this week, so it's a big week for Glover already, and he's trying to take the belt back to Brazil. Does he do it, or do you like our guy Jan to remain and still?
I can't pick against Jan Blachowicz anymore. It's gotten me too many times. You know what? To your point, he is getting the respect, and he deserves the respect. The way he fought Israel Adesanya, it showed championship mentality. He was smart. He didn't let ego get to him. He didn't go in there saying, listen, I'm the better striker. I'm not going to wrestle. He wrestled a guy in Adesanya who wasn't as good at wrestling. The takedown defense wasn't there, and he's not a threat off his back. The one thing about Jan Blachowicz that people need to really understand, this guy carries extreme power, but he does not throw to hurt. He does it with the flow of his striking, with his combinations, okay? When guys try too hard, it's not there. When they let the striking just go and they do it within time, that finish comes. For Glover Teixeira, his chin has just not been there for a long time. You know, the way he beat Ion Cutelaba, the way he beat Thiago Santos, he got tagged and he recovered and was able to get guys down that are not known for their jiu-jitsu, are not known for their takedown defense. If he gets tagged by Jan Blachowicz, he's going to sleep. If he doesn't and he's able to recover, he's not going to be able to get Jan Blachowicz down. I think Blachowicz's takedown defense is very good, very solid. For me, this is Jan Blachowicz's win. Look, Glover deserves a title shot. At this age, in general, what he's done in his career, I'm happy for him. Two great guys, nice guys. They love each other during the week. They're going to fight in the cage. They're going to try to hurt each other. But Jan Blachowicz, I believe, wins this fight, and I think he gets it done by TKO at -110. That's my gut here, Brett.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think everything you said is what a lot of the sport is feeling right now, that they're very happy for Glover, but man, what a tall test. It's nothing really against what Glover's doing. Like you mentioned, he completely earned this title shot, but Jan Blachowicz is just a very, very difficult guy to beat right now. How do you hurt this guy? How do you submit him? How do you win a round against him? Because he is so calculated, because he is taking control of those fights from really every single aspect. He controls the pace of it. He controls where it takes place. I'm just very, very, very impressed with Jan Blachowicz, and it's a high line. It's a high line for a championship fight, but I do think that it is deserving. So that will do it for the individual fight breakdowns. I know you got a parlay in mind, Ian, for this card, as you always do. What are we putting on the parlay this week?
Yeah, we're going to go with a five-legger. We're going to go Duraev, Ankalaev, Chimaev, Petr Yan, and Jan Blachowicz. And we're going to get that at +285. I think all these guys get it done. So if you don't want to take the props, the method of victories, and you're just looking for these heavy favorites to get the win, +285, getting over 2-to-1 your money, that's where I'm going to go with on my parlay.
Yeah, and it's a nice little way to put some money on the fights and then not continue to put money on the fights. You know, you can be entertained all night long with one bet. Hopefully, as long as no one kills that parlay early. Okay, how about the best bets, Ian? You went 2-1 last week in Vegas. Where are you going with the best bets here in Fight Island?
We're going to start off with Amanda Ribas. Again, for me, I really think that she gets this done. I think she's the better overall fighter here. You know, with Jandiroba, we know what we got to do. Keep her from being on top, and I believe that Ribas' judo and takedown defense and her striking will get her the win. Magomed Ankalaev by TKO or KO at +100. I do not see Volkan Ozdemir going the full 3 rounds against him. And Khamzat Chimaev, I know we took him before by TKO, but for me to take the pressure off, let's just say that he wins inside the distance. I'm still happy with that number at -175.
All right, those are Ian's best bets for UFC 267, which takes place again in Fight Island on Abu Dhabi. You can watch it as a special presentation on ESPN Plus for all ESPN Plus subscribers. And before we close up shop, Ian, let's go ahead and look at what's going on next week. I fly from Abu Dhabi straight to New York. I'm going to stay there for this banger of a card. My goodness, arguably the best pay-per-view of the year. I can't wait for it. Frankie Edgar, Marlon Vera, Shane Burgos, Billy Quarantillo, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Rose Namajunas, Zhang Weili Zhang, and Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman, a rematch of 2019. Kamaru Usman's definitely the most competitive fight he's ever had. Colby, the only guy who's actually even won a round against Kamaru Usman. So can't wait for UFC 268, but it will come after UFC 267, which you can watch on ESPN Plus. For Ian Parker and myself, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.